Welcome to our first in a series of videos for beginners to crochet. Throughout this series we will try to give you all the knowledge and skills you will need to get you on your way to creating your first crochet project. Crochet has seen a resurgence in recent years. However, many novices have found much of the terminology confusing. We're here to rectify all that. In this video, we will look at the tools and equipment you need to get started, and some you may wish to purchase in the future. But before I start, I just want to mention a little about the terminology and some of the differences you might find between the UK and US terminology that beginners often find confusing. The US and UK have different names for stitches. For example, in the UK we call one particular stitch a double crochet, while in the US they call the same stitch a single crochet. What we call a treble crochet, Americans call a double crochet. You can see it can get confusing, especially when you're watching YouTube videos. Often even British videos will use US terms. One way to check if a pattern is using UK terms is to see if there's any reference to a single crochet. If there is, then the pattern is using US terms. There's no stitch called a single crochet in UK terminology. Also, the naming convention for hook sizes is different. In the UK, we use the diameter of the hook shaft in millimetres as the size name, while in the US they use letters and numbers. I will put a link in the description to a conversion chart. As if that isn't enough, the Americans use different naming conventions for yarn weights and thicknesses. As we are UK based, we will be using UK terminology, given the alternative US terms where appropriate. We're going to start with the crochet hooks. As I have just said, in the UK we measure the thickness of a hook in millimetres. Crochet hooks come in many different shapes and sizes and are made from many different materials. Not so long ago there was really only one choice, and that was aluminium, although smaller steel hooks, known as steels, were available and used for fine lacy work. These days hooks are available made of steel, aluminium, plastic, wood, bamboo and even glass. You can get plain hooks or hooks with plastic handles, wooden ergonomically shaped hooks, and even clear plastic light-up hooks. We recommend using hooks with a silicone handle such as these. These are easier to handle and comfortable to use. Sets of hooks can be bought for around £10 or they can be purchased singly for a couple of pounds each. So which hooks to use? Most patterns will recommend a particular hook size, and also the label on the yarn will indicate a recommended hook size. Most beginners will use DK or double knit yarn, which usually recommends a 4mm hook. However, we recommend a novice starts by using a 5mm hook. The reason for this is that invariably a beginner will crochet tightly, and using a larger hook compensates for that a little. Also, using a larger hook will make it easier to see the stitches. Other tools you will need are a small pair of sharp scissors, or snips for cutting the yarn, and yarn needles. These are used for weaving in ends and sewing together your project. Yarn needles can be made of plastic, such as this, or steel, and the steel ones are usually available in packs of 2, one sharp and one blunt. The sharp needle is useful when weaving ends in, as it will pierce through the yarn, making the ends less likely to pull out. The blunt needle is useful for sewing together your project, when you want your stitches to go through the stitches but not pierce the yarn. Another item you may wish to purchase but aren't entirely necessary are stitch markers. Again, these come in a range of shapes and sizes. They're useful for marking your last stitch when you take a break from your project. This will stop your work from unravelling. They're also used when working in rounds or spirals, so you know when you've come to the end of the round. Alternatively, you could use a short length of a contrasting yarn or even a paper clip. Yarn comes in many varieties and weights. They may be made of natural fibres such as wool, or synthetic fibres such as acrylic, or even a blend of the two. We recommend that a beginner uses an acrylic yarn, which is cheaper and often of a more consistent quality than natural yarns. One drawback to using acrylic yarn is it can be prone to splitting and may have a cheap and sometimes plastic feel to it. When buying yarn, look at the cut end. If it looks untidy or frayed, it may be an indication that the yarn is prone to splitting. Also check that it feels soft and smooth. We recommend that a beginner uses Stylecraft double knit. It's a good quality, consistent acrylic yarn, which is less prone to splitting and is widely available. There's also a good selection of colours available and it's keenly priced. In the next video, we will look at holding the yarn and hook and creating your first stitches.